Hi guys! So I am here today for the second part of my October book haul, which means all the books that I bought secondhand or borrowed from the library. Where has the month gone? I love doing these videos though because I think they just highlight that you don't need to spend a lot of money to read a lot of books. I grew up in libraries and my dad always bought me secondhand books for Christmas, so it's something I have carried on throughout my life into my adulthood, and that's why I'm so pleased today to be able to tell you that this video is sponsored by We Buy Books. So if you aren't familiar with We Buy Books, then they are a website that allows you to sell your books for a little bit of cash in order to, you know, maybe spend it on other books. I don't know what you want to do with your money. There's no requirements, but I've got to say that's kind of what I always end up doing. And I've actually been using We Buy Books for quite some time now because I personally only keep about 50% of the books that I bring into my house. I don't really like to keep books I don't think I'm going to read again. Whether I enjoyed reading them the first time or not, that doesn't always mean I'm going to read it multiple times. So often I either pass it on, donate it, or my favourite way to get rid of it is to sell it to We Buy Books. So if I bought the book myself and it's still in good condition, then I will, you know, stack up a little pile, check their website and see if they're currently taking that title. As you can tell from behind me, I do have a lot of books, which is one of the other reasons I often get rid of books once I've read them, because I just don't necessarily have the space to keep every book I've read, as much as I would love this like great huge library of a home. That's not what I have the room for at the moment. And there's also certain books I've always found I prefer to pass on, like if I read a children's book as an adult, I kind of like the idea that then a child can enjoy that book after me rather than me just holding on to it, which is of course completely personal preference, but that is some of the reasons why I might get rid of a book, and it does mean I get rid of a lot of books. I also like to turn over my books quite quickly, which works well with We Buy Books because the more recent a release or the better condition a book, the more likely you are to get a little bit of money from it. Although I have found that there are some classics that always have people looking for them and therefore are always kind of desirable to We Buy Books. And of course, secondhand book shopping and selling on has that added bonus of having a lower carbon footprint. Now, I'm not gonna lie, you all know I love a new book. I have the great fortune to be sent new books by publishers for review, and I do pick up the occasional new book myself. However, I still continue to purchase secondhand and to borrow from the library because it just helps me find a little bit more balance financially and environmentally than it would if I bought every single book I was ever interested in reading brand new. And you know I read quite a lot, so that would be a lot of books. And generally speaking, I just like the idea of passing things on to people that might enjoy them more, and when you sell your books to We Buy Books, they then sell them on to people who are on the hunt for them. So you make a little bit of money and somebody else gets to enjoy that book, which I think is an awesome system. So do check them out in the description box down below. They have given me a code, Jean10, which means they will add an extra 10% to the amount they are offering you in exchange for your books, and that code will work up until the end of November. So thanks so much to We Buy Books for sponsoring this video and for providing us with that awesome little code. So without further ado, let's get into the books. As usual, I'm going to start with the secondhand books, then move on to the library books, and I think the first book is kind of apt because it's secondhand, but I didn't buy it. I actually took it from my dad's bookshelf. Most of you are aware, I believe, that my dad has passed away, but all of his books are still in my mum's house, and in a way I still feel connected to him through reading the books on his shelves and be able to pick them up because it feels a little bit like he's recommending them to me. I don't know, that's a little bit cheesy, but it's true. And the one that I picked up when I was last in Edinburgh was The Left Hand of Darkness by Ursula K. Le Guin. This is a science fiction feminist classic, I think you could describe it as. I believe it first came out in the 1960s. I was going to say 70s, but it came out in 1969, so even earlier than that. And it's set on a planet where gender isn't a thing. More than that, in fact, sex isn't a thing. The individuals of this planet are described as ambisexual, so they're neither men nor women. They don't define themselves by those roles in society, and through that it is a commentary on gender roles in society when Ursula K. Le Guin was writing this, but it sounds like it's still very relevant, and I've always wanted to read this book. Ursula K. Le Guin, like I said, very famous science fiction author. I'm gonna read this. So we then have the books I did actually buy for myself, and the first one you may have seen in my Brighton vlog because I found it in a charity shop in Brighton for £2.50, and I'm so excited because it's been on my TBR for years now, and that is The Clan of the Cave Bear, book 1 in the Earth's Children series by Jean M. Auel. That's how YouTube is telling me to pronounce that surname, so hopefully it's correct, but you know, excellent first name I can say for certain there. And this series of books is set in the prehistoric era and follows a young girl, Ayla, who is adopted by a clan of Neanderthals. And I'm not sure if Ayla is a Neanderthal or if she's a Homo sapien, because the two hominin types did coexist for a time, and I've heard amazing things about this. I've never read a book set in prehistoric times, even though I find that period incredibly interesting. So I think this sounds so unique, so interesting, and is, again, like I said, a bit of a classic series that's been going for quite some time and has a lot of like dedicated fans. So I was really pleased to find that one. And then I did find one other book in a charity shop, which is Song in Silence by Elizabeth Kerner. Now this one I'd never heard of, but it ticked my boxes for what I look for in charity bookshops, and that is fancy mass market paperbacks. And this one has a dragon on the front, as well as what looks like a kind of fierce female protagonist. Another thing I look for in my fantasy, and I am so keen to just check this out. I've looked it up and Elizabeth Kerner seems to have tons of fantasy books, so if I like her, I've got an author to keep me going for quite some time. This one says it follows Lannin, who has spent her life being told just how wrong-headed and foolish she is by her entire family, but when Lannin's father dies, she chooses to leave her abusive relationships and search out the great dragon she has always dreamed of, though she knows what she seeks may not be real. I feel like me and Lannin are going to get on, and I'm really excited about this. The next one I ordered online because I saw Chelsea from the Reading Outlaw mention this in a video all about queer horror, which is a genre I need more books in. And that is Daughters Unto Devils by Amy Lukavics, and that's a pretty creepy cover. Now Chelsea really sold this one to me, but I haven't read it, so I'm just going to tell you what the blurb says on the back. It says 16-year-old Amanda Werner fears she is losing her mind. When her family move from their small mountain cabin to the vast prairie, Amanda hopes she can leave her haunting memories behind. Of her sickly ma giving birth to a terribly afflicted baby, of the cabin fever that claimed Amanda's sanity, of the boy she's been meeting in secret. But the Werners arrive in the prairie to find their new home soaked in blood. So much blood. So like I mentioned, this was in the video that Chelsea did on queer and feminist horror. So I'm not sure if this one's queer per se, but even it being feminist is still pretty hard to find in the horror genre. So I'm really, really excited about this. And then I found a copy of another book that I have been interested in reading, so I was really pleased to find a second-hand copy, and that is The Faulkner by Elizabeth May, and this is set in historical Edinburgh, my hometown, and is the first in a fantasy series. So this one follows Lady Eilina Cameron, who, like I said, lives in Edinburgh in the 1800s, and her mother is murdered by the fair folk. So this is a fantasy novel that interacts with the world of the fae, which you know I love. So a historical 1800s fantasy set in Edinburgh with fae just sounds like it was made for me. But I believe Eilina decides to, you know, sort of avenge her mother and find out exactly what happened. So I'm really excited about this one, basically. But we then have 4 books that I have borrowed from the library. So let's start with the 2 graphic novels. Book 1 is Faith Volume 1, which is the first in a comic book series, and I particularly like finding comic books and graphic novels secondhand or getting them from the library, because I have traded in almost every single trade paperback volume of comic book series I have ever bought. And sometimes I have bought them because I haven't been able to find them secondhand or get them out of the library, and I've really wanted to read them, but I rarely feel like keeping them around. So yeah, this definitely works better for me. And what drew me to this is that it is a superhero comic, but what makes the superhero unique is that she is plus size, which is something that you don't see a lot, particularly in female superheroes. So I wanted to give this one a chance. I don't read a lot of superhero comic books, They're not my favourite genre, but I liked the sound of this and thought it might be a fun place to dip my toe in. I then picked up a different kind of comic book, and that is Firefly, The Unification War Part 1. If you haven't seen Firefly, what have you been doing? It is a cult classic series that got cancelled after one season, yet has managed to build the most ridiculously large fan base, and I am completely on board with all of that because it is phenomenal. There was then a film that kind of wrapped up the loose plot strings that were left at the end of season 1, and these stories provide fans with an opportunity to return to this world. Although I think that maybe this is set before the film. If you've read it, correct me if I'm wrong, but just from having a flick through and having seen the film, I think that maybe it's set before, so let me know though, I'd be interested. And then I picked up 2 horror mystery thrillers because if you haven't been able to tell already, I am in the Halloween spirit. Book 1 was one I did reserve for myself, and that is The Girl Next Door by Ruth Rendell. I've never actually read any Ruth Rendell, but her kind of creepy horror thrillers come so highly recommended that I really wanted to check one out and like the sound of this one. It says, beneath the green meadows of Loughton, Essex, a dark network of tunnels has been dug. A group of children discover them, they play there, it becomes their place. 70 years on, the world has changed. Developers have altered the rural landscape. Friends from a half-remembered world have married, died, grown sick, moved, or disappeared. Work on a new house called Warlock uncovers a long-buried, grisly secret, and a weedy detective more concerned with current crimes must investigate a case of murder. I love a cold case, I love a creepy property, and like I said, Ruth Rendell comes really highly recommended, so I'm excited to read this one. And then the next one I know even less about because it was literally just on my library's new in recommendations shelf where they display a few books that people might not have spotted before or are topical, and I thought it sounded brilliant, so decided to take it out, and that is A Rustle of Silk by Alice Clare. This one is set in Devon in 1607, which already has me excited because I love a historical mystery, and we follow Gabriel Taverner, former ship surgeon turned country physician who is called to examine a rotting body found impaled on a blade. Identifying the corpse seems a hopeless task and the death is declared a suicide, but Gabriel is not satisfied and re-examines the body and of course discovers that something is amiss and something dastardly is afoot. So that had me intrigued, but let me know if you've read that one or any of the books that I have mentioned because that is all for this video. Thank you so much once again to We Buy Books for sponsoring this video. Don't forget to use the code JEAN10 if you're trading in your books between now and the end of November. Happy reading and I'll see you all again soon. Bye guys!